My name is Elena Hart, and I am 29 years old and I live in Salem, Oregon, where I work as a junior archivist at the local historical society just off State Street. It's not a glamorous job, but it's quiet, and I like the way the old paper smells like dried flowers and forgotten time. I spend my days cataloging letters from the 1800s and scanning faded photographs of people who lived and died before cars even roamed these streets. My boss is a woman named Margaret Winslow who's been at the society for over 30 years, and she always wears these stiff wool skirts that make a scratching sound when she walks. She's in her late 50s with hair pulled back so tight it looks like her eyebrows might fly off her face. She treats me like I'm barely there unless something goes wrong, and then suddenly I'm the only person she sees. I've always tried to do a good job. I come in early. I double-check my entries. I even fixed the scanner last winter when it kept jamming because no one else knew how. But every time they talk about promotions or leadership training, Margaret's eyes just slide right past me. I thought it was because I was new, but then I found out it wasn't that at all. It was because of what happened with the Johnson donation. The Johnson family used to own a big estate just outside of town, and when old Harriet Johnson passed away last spring, her nephew donated her entire collection to us. Boxes and boxes of journals, quilts, old glass bottles, silverware, even a dollhouse made in 1892. It was the biggest single donation the society had gotten in over a decade. Margaret was thrilled. She gave a speech at the press event and made it sound like she'd personally convinced Harriet on her deathbed to give us everything. But I was the one who sorted it. I stayed late for 3 weeks going through every box, labeling each item, writing descriptions, uploading them into the digital archive. It was exhausting, but also kind of magical. You never know what you're going to find in a stranger's life. One of Harriet's journals had a pressed violet between 2 pages with the words, "I still miss him on the day I turned 83. It made me cry in the back room. I wanted to make sure everything was preserved the right way. So when I noticed something was missing, I didn't just brush it off. In the inventory, Harriet listed a silver locket engraved with the initials HJB and EJS. The description said it was given to her by her first love, Edward J. Shepard, before he left for the Spanish-American War, and that she never opened it after he died at sea. It was supposed to be in a red satin box tucked inside her writing desk drawer. But when the desk arrived, the drawer was empty. I checked every box twice. I asked the delivery man if anything had fallen out. He said no. I went through every photo we took of the estate before the movers came, and in one you could see the locket sitting on top of the desk just out of reach of the camera. It existed. It was real. So I told Margaret. I showed her the photo and the inventory and said I thought maybe it got misplaced or stolen before the donation. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "You're saying we can't account for a historical artifact, Elena, that reflects poorly on the institution?" I said, "I'm not saying anything, I'm just reporting what's missing." She snapped the folder shut and told me to keep my mouth shut and not cause a panic. But I couldn't let it go. So I started asking around. I called the nephew. I reached out to the estate lawyer. I even drove out to the property to talk to the caretaker who still lived in the gatehouse. That's when I found out something that made my skin crawl. The caretaker said he saw Margaret's car there 2 days before the movers came. He didn't think anything of it at the time because she said she was doing a pre-assessment. But he remembered because it was pouring rain and she left her umbrella behind and he had to return it the next week. That was not on the schedule. No one was supposed to be on the property before the official handover. And then it hit me. What if she took it? What if Margaret stole Harriet Johnson's locket? I didn't have proof. Not yet, but it made sense. I knew Margaret was obsessed with antiques. She had a private collection she bragged about at staff meetings. Coins, watches, cameos, things she claimed were family heirlooms, but people who knew her said she was never rich. Her father was a postal worker, her mother taught piano. Where did she get all these expensive pieces? I began to watch her more closely. I started noticing things. Like how she always wore the same pearl necklace to board meetings but never at regular staff gatherings. Or how once I saw her unlock a small drawer in her office cabinet that I'd never seen her use before. I pretended to be looking for a stapler and walked past her desk when she was out and saw a velvet pouch peeking out from under some papers. I didn't touch it. I didn't open it. But that night I couldn't sleep. Because if she did take the locket, then she wasn't just a thief. She was a fraud. And someone like that had no business running a historical society. So I decided to find out the truth. Not for the job, not for the promotion, but because Harriet Johnson deserved to have her story told right. And because no one else would do it. I started small. I began logging every time Margaret came in late or left early. She was supposed to be here by 9, but more often than not she didn't show up until after 10. I saved the security emails that showed her car entering the parking lot at 10:17 or 10:43. I noticed she took long unapproved lunches, sometimes 2 hours and always on Wednesdays. I asked the front desk volunteer casually if Margaret had any appointments and she said no one ever calls for her on Wednesdays. Then I checked the society's social media. We have a Facebook page and Instagram, and it's supposed to be my job to post content twice a week. But every Wednesday there were posts going up at 11:30 a.m. with photos of exhibits and quotes from old letters. I never posted those. I had no idea they were being made. I looked at the backend and found out they were uploaded from a personal iPad, not our office device. I tracked the IP address through the Wi-Fi logs, and it was connected from a cafe on the other side of town called the Roasted Bean. So on the next Wednesday I went there. I didn't confront her. I just sat in the corner with a book and a coffee. And there she was, at her favorite table in the back, wearing sunglasses and typing on her iPad. But she wasn't working. She was scrolling through an auction site, Antique Auction Live, and she was bidding on things. A 19th century pocket watch, a set of Civil War buttons, a mourning brooch, all things that could easily have come from museum donations. And each time she placed a bid she used a pseudonym. M. Winslow was too risky, so she went by E. Jenners. The same initials as Harriet's locket. HJB and EJS, Edward J. Shepard, E. Jenners. It wasn't a match, but it was close enough to make my stomach twist. Then I saw her open a small box. She looked around like a thief, then lifted out a silver locket. She didn't open it. She just held it in her palm and looked at it like it was a secret only she was allowed to know. And on the chain was a tiny tag, handmade, engraved, HJB, Harriet Johnson Baker. That was her full name. I took a photo with my phone from across the room. My hands were shaking. I had proof, not just that she stole it, but that she was selling other stolen artifacts, possibly even from our own collection. I didn't know how far it went, but I knew I had to stop her, so I went to the Society's board of directors. I brought them the photos, the Wi-Fi logs, the security timestamps, the auction pages. I thought they'd be outraged. I thought they'd fire her on the spot, but they were. They thanked me for my diligence, but said they needed to conduct a formal investigation. Said they had to protect the Society's reputation. Said they'd get back to me. A week went by, then two. Margaret was still there, still coming in late, still posting fake content on Wednesdays. And then one morning I walked into my office and everything was gone. My desk was empty, my files deleted, my login disabled. I went to the front desk and asked what happened. The volunteer looked uncomfortable. She said Margaret told them I'd been let go due to budget cuts, but there were no budget cuts. I called the board, no one answered. I emailed, no reply. I drove to the office the next day and my keycard didn't work. I looked through the glass and saw Margaret at my computer going through my old folders. She wasn't even pretending. She de-erased me like I'd never existed. That's when I knew I couldn't fight her with rules. She'd already broken them all and gotten away with it. So I decided to fight her with her own weapons. Secrets, lies, greed. I created my own auction account. I called it Old Salem Treasure. I didn't list anything real, not at first. I took photos of fake items. Things I made in my kitchen. A leather-bound book with forged signatures. A vial of pioneer medicine filled with tea leaves and ink. I gave them fake provenances. Said they came from a hidden attic in a 1700s Salem home. I priced them high. $800 for the book. $600 for the vial. And I waited. It didn't take long. Margaret bid on both. She bought them within days. She thought she was getting first dibs on lost history. But she was buying trash, and I made sure the payments were traceable. I used a real payment processor and linked it to a bank account under my real name. She could see who she was buying from. She had to know it was me, but she didn't stop. If anything, she bid higher on the next items, so I escalated. I found an old theater ticket in a book donation from years ago. 1923, vaudeville show in Portland. I scanned it and listed it as one of only 3 known surviving tickets from the lost Pacific Northwest vaudeville tour. I set the price at $1,500. She bought it in 3 minutes. Then I hit her with the big one. I made up a diary. I wrote it myself. 50 pages in an antique notebook. I aged the paper with tea and candle smoke. I wrote entries from a woman named Abigail Poole who claimed to have helped a witch escape the Salem trials in 1692. I included sketches of hidden tunnels under City Hall, a map of a burying ground no one knew about, and a final entry that said I have sealed the chest beneath the hearth and only my blood will open it. I listed it as extremely rare first-hand account of occult survival during the witch hysteria. Starting bid $5,000. I knew she couldn't resist. And I was right. She bid $7,500, won it outright. I shipped it to her home. No return address, just her name in shaky script like it had been mailed from the past. 2 weeks went by. I didn't hear anything. Then I saw a news story. The Salem Historical Society announced a major new exhibit coming this fall titled Women of the Witch Trials: A Hidden Resistance. They said it was based on recently uncovered primary sources and would feature groundbreaking revelations about underground networks. There was a photo of Margaret standing in front of a mock-up of a secret tunnel holding up the fake diary. She looked radiant, like she discovered fire. The board was praising her. Local papers called her a visionary. And all I could do was laugh, because I knew what was coming, because buried in the back of the diary was a single loose page, not glued in. Not part of the narrative, just tucked behind the last entry. It was a list. A list of items sold on Antique Auction Live under the name E. Jenners. Dates, prices, descriptions, all of them matching items that had gone missing from society donations over the past 5 years. And at the bottom, a note written in the same old-fashioned hand: "This is not history. This is theft. You are not a keeper of the past. You are a grave robber, and you will be exposed." The list included Harriet Johnson's locket, the watch, the brooch, even the fake book she'd bought from me. I knew she'd see it, I knew she'd panic, and I was right. 4 days after the exhibit announcement, the Society put out a second statement. "Margaret Winslow has taken a sudden medical leave to focus on her health. The exhibit has been postponed indefinitely." The board launched an internal review. I didn't say a word, I just waited. Then someone leaked the diary to a local reporter. Not me, I didn't have to. The story exploded. How could a 300-year-old diary have modern glue? Why did it reference archaeological sites that didn't exist? Why did it contain a list of stolen goods? The board demanded the diary be returned. Margaret refused. She claimed it was private property. Then they subpoenaed her auction records. And there it was, every sale, every purchase, every lie. The board fired her, publicly, with a statement that said she had violated the core ethical principles of historical preservation and that all donations would now be audited. The locket was returned to the Johnson family. The nephew gave a speech at the Society thanking them for finally doing the right thing. I wasn't mentioned, not once, but I didn't care. Because on the last day of the investigation, I received a package. No return address. Inside was the locket, and a note in shaky writing: "This belonged to her, but you earned it." I opened it for the first time. Inside was a tiny photo of a young man in uniform, Edward J. Shepard, and a single pressed violet, just like in the journal. I kept the locket. I don't wear it, I don't show it off. I keep it in my desk drawer, and sometimes when I'm alone I open it and look at the flower. It's still there after all these years. Still purple, still fragile, still real. And I think about Harriet Johnson. And I think about how some stories survive not because they're loud, but because someone refuses to let them be forgotten. I never got my job back. The Society closed the archivist position permanently. But I started my own project. I call it the Forgotten Archive. I go to estate sales and garage sales and thrift stores, and I buy old letters and diaries and photos. I scan them. I write about them. I post them online. Thousands of people follow me. I don't charge a dime. I just want the stories to live. And last month I got an email from the new director of the Historical Society. They want to partner with me. They want to create a real exhibit. No fake tunnels, no made-up witches, just real people, real lives, real truth. I said yes, on one condition: that my name is on the plaque, not as a footnote, not as a helper, but as the lead historian. They agreed. The exhibit opens in January. The first item on display will be Harriet Johnson's locket. And next to it, a photo of me holding the fake diary, with a caption that reads: "Some lies are told to uncover a greater truth." I thought about what I did. Was it revenge? Yes, but it was also justice. Margaret stole more than objects. She stole memory. She stole legacy. She tried to erase me just like she erased those who couldn't speak for themselves. But she forgot one thing. The past has a way of coming back, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes in a storm, but it always comes. And when it does, it doesn't care how powerful you think you are. It only cares that the truth gets told. I used her greed against her. I used her ego. I made her believe in a lie so beautiful she couldn't see the trap until it was too late. And now every time someone visits that exhibit, they'll see not just Harriet's story, they'll see mine. And they'll know that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who changes everything. About a week after the agreement was signed, I was going through another box of old letters I'd bought at a sale in Eugene. Most were just love notes from the 1940s. But at the bottom was a yellowed envelope with no stamp, just my name written in delicate script. Elena Hart. I opened it. Inside was a single page. It was a receipt from the Roasted Bean, dated the Wednesday before I was fired, and on it scribbled in red pen a message: I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. And now you've taken everything. You win, but history remembers the vandals too. Signed M.W. I stared at it for a long time, then I added it to the exhibit, not as a threat, not as a warning, but as proof that even the fallen get their place in the archive, because no story truly ends, not as long as someone is willing to remember.